Hello everyone, today is 12th of October, Saturday, so I hope you have a wonderful day and a weekend. Now it's 12:30, middle of the day by Moscow time. I'm Levan Gudadze and this is my first update for a day in which I will share all the main news that are making headlines in Russian media outlets and Russian language pages on different internet platforms. There are quite a few very significant developments and news that I'd like to share with you for this moment. Although before I start, let me remind you, if I may, that on weekdays I will have 2 or 3 updates, and on weekends just one update if nothing extraordinary is happening. So most likely this is the only update for today. Although of course I'm talking about YouTube and Rumble in this case. On Patreon and Boosty platforms I will publish tomorrow this week's episode of Behind the Scenes, and I hope our communities on Patreon and Boosty will find it interesting. That being said, let's talk about news now. And first of all, I want to share with you this news that I talked about in previous updates also yesterday, that Russian armed forces established full control over the settlement of Ostrovskaya in DPR, Donetsk People's Republic. And let me show you on the map this settlement. It's located on the eastern outskirts basically of Kurachovo city. This is Kurachovo, major logistical hub of Kiev regime on the central and southern sectors of the front line. And this is Ostrovskaya settlement. And right now Russian troops basically are conducting operations on outskirts of Kurachovo itself. Maybe some Russian DRGs already are operating inside the Kurachovo, and of course if and when Kiev regime will lose control over the Kurachovo, that's going to be a major blow for Kiev regime's defense lines in these sectors. Also, dear friends, we have a report from RIA Novosti, which is based on statements of Major General Abdi Alaudinov, head of Akhmat Special Forces and high-ranking officer of the Russian Defense Ministry. And according to him, Russian forces during the counter-terrorist operation in the Kursk salient area liberated 19 settlements from invading forces of the Kiev regime and the NATO mercenaries. And when it comes to Kursk salient, we also have this news from Vzгляд newspaper that about 1,500 militants of the Kiev regime and NATO mercenaries are now encircled in areas close to Olgovka settlement in the Kursk salient, and the most likely significant number of this encircled military personnel of Kiev regime will have to lay down arms and surrender. And when it comes to Kursk salient, also update from Defense Ministry about overall casualties of the Kiev regime and NATO mercenaries in this direction. And latest numbers are that Kiev regime lost since the beginning of invasion into Kursk region about 21,900 military personnel, almost 22,000 military personnel killed and wounded. Also 144 tanks, 69 infantry fighting vehicles, 98 armored personnel carriers, 897 different type of armored vehicles, like Max Pro, for example, that can be used as a carrier for troops or transport vehicle. Also 594 motor vehicles that were transformed for military use, 181 artillery pieces, 34 launchers for their multi-launch rocket systems, including 8 HIMARS, 9 launchers for air defense systems, 9 counter-battery radars, 3 radars of the air defense systems, 22 pieces of engineering equipment, and more different type of equipment. Overall, Kiev regime lost, as I already said, up to 22,000 military personnel and more than 2,000 different type of military equipment. Let's continue with this report. TASS news agency is reporting that former Russian president and the current deputy chairman of the Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, commented on recent statements of former and possibly future president of US, Donald Trump, when he says that he had a plan how to end the Ukrainian crisis, this conflict there, or proxy war that Western ruling class is waging against Russia. And Medvedev stated that, well, Russian president can respond to these statements from Trump and tell him that basically he can recommend to Kiev regime to capitulate. And that will be it. That will be it. Conflict will end. And these statements, dear friends, we all know that Dmitry Medvedev, time to time, trolling Western ruling elites, and does make some very strong statements. This is his style of communicating, and still, these statements from Medvedev definitely can be seen as an indicator that for Moscow nothing can be acceptable but unconditional surrender or capitulation of the Kiev regime, which will mean obviously capitulation of Western ruling class, or acceptance by Western ruling class that they lost this proxy war against Russia. And once this will happen, once Western ruling class will face the reality, I guess they will be ready in that case to work with their emerging multipolar world about a new world order that is being created before very our eyes. TASS news agency is reporting that there was an article, yet another article in Western media or propaganda outlets, this time German Spiegel, which said that Kiev regime is seriously considering now scenarios of ending their hostility in a zone of special military operation by ceding some territories. Well, this is definitely not the first and I'm quite sure not the last article on this topic. Lately, quite a number of Western media outlets were writing about such a possibility, such scenarios, and I guess this is due to understanding, at least among some individuals in the Western ruling class, that they truly lost this proxy war, and it is time to acknowledge this. So the authorities in Kiev for the first time began to seriously discuss the scenario of territorial concessions to Russia in order to resolve the conflict. This is reported by Der Spiegel magazine, which references to a high-ranking Ukrainian officials. According to this source of the Spiegel, regardless of who wins the US presidential elections, Americans will slowly but surely withdraw from the providing assistance to Kiev. The forecast is bad. Their source stated, he noted that decline in morale in the armed forces of Ukraine and their split in society, people don't really want to fight anymore, will definitely have its influence also on overall situation. Now, according to this source, it is obvious that ending the conflict without concessions is impossible. The deal should also be beneficial for Russia. This source concluded. So that's quite a change in the tune, isn't it? In Kiev, and when I say Kiev regime, I mean Western ruling class, basically. And we all know, we all understand that all these Western media outlets or propaganda outlets are controlled basically by same groups in the West, right? So yes, understanding that Western ruling class lost this proxy war against Russia is there, as far as I understand, and who knows? Let's see how these presidential elections will go in US, and then what will be Washington's position. But even if Kiev regime is expecting that no matter who will win in the US, trajectory is that well, Kiev regime is losing supporter, and the Western ruling class is basically no longer believes that they can achieve strategical defeat of Russia. I mean, all this understanding definitely indicates that possibly we will see end of this conflict in 2025. Also, we have this report here from RT that Ukrainian lawmakers approve unpopular tax hikes. So Ukraine's parliament has approved their country's first major tax increase since the outbreak of the conflict with Russia in 2022, as the budget deficit continues to grow. The draft law, which has drawn sharp criticism from their opposition and the public, was passed by lower house on Thursday. It proposes an increase in the war tax paid by residents from 1.5 to 5%, also 50% tax rate on bank profits, and 25% tax on financial companies, among other measures. The finance ministry said the new new levies, which are expected to be signed off by Ukrainian leader Vladimir Zelensky later this month, would contribute their equivalent of $563 million to their national budget this year and around $3 billion next year. Let's see. Kiev regime is desperate for manpower, for weapons, for money, and they are trying now to rob just about everybody in Ukraine to further prolong this conflict, to further maintain themselves basically in power. But I don't think this will help. I truly don't. Anyways, let's continue. Glad newspaper is reporting that Annalena Baerbock, foreign minister of Germany, stated that conversation between Russian President Putin and German Chancellor Scholz is impossible at the present, and basically she stated that Russian president has no interest to talking to Scholz. Maybe foreign minister of Germany try to communicate with Russian side to arrange phone call between Putin and Scholz, and I guess Russian president declined their conversation because what about he is going to talk with Scholz? I mean, you tell me. When I was reading this news and I was thinking about topics that possibly can be discussed between Russian president and German chancellor, I couldn't come up with even one good reasoning why should the Russian president spend any time talking to the Scholz. I mean, who the hell is Scholz really, man? He is a little puppet of the Washington, right? And if Moscow wants to have some talks with Washington, then Moscow will talk with Washington without any middlemen, right? So therefore, I can absolutely understand why Russian leader might decline conversation with the Scholz, because I mean, what Scholz, man? Russian president is too busy to spend time on puppets of CIA, right? Anyways, let's continue. RT is reporting, and this news is somewhat relevant because lately there were several reports in the Western media that Scholz was talking about upcoming conversation with the Russian president. I was skeptical at the time, and I'm still skeptical. And now Baerbock is stating that there will be no talk between Putin and the Scholz, at least anytime soon. RT is reporting that NATO is planning new Russian strategy. Okay, so NATO defense ministers will meet in Brussels next week to start rethinking their bloc's decades-old strategy on relations with Russia. Politico has reported, despite the ties between NATO and Russia hitting rock bottom after the outbreak of the Ukraine conflict in February 2022, the founding act with Moscow remains in force within the US-led alliance. The outlet noted in an article on Friday in 1997 document which states that NATO and Russia share a common goal to build a stable, peaceful, and undivided Europe does not reflect their current situation, Politico wrote. During the summit in Washington in July, NATO labeled Moscow the most significant and direct threat to alliance security, while Russia continues to insist that the bloc's eastward expansion is an existential danger for the country. NATO countries are now trying to map out different elements of the Russia strategy and advance their debates inside their alliance. That takes us to subjects like a future of the NATO-Russia Founding Act. A senior US official was quoted by Politico as saying, it is time to now craft a new strategy in terms of specific positions of their member states. The official added, well, NATO is obviously anti-Russian military blocker and always was. Let's be clear on that. And in my personal opinion, only good solution will be NATO to be dissolved, right? Because there is no need for NATO to exist in this world. NATO definitely not makes Europe any safer, and NATO is definitely not a defensive organization. And we see that when NATO destroyed Yugoslavia, when NATO tried to obliterate Serbia, and when NATO played a crucial part dividing Serbia, many people may forget that it was NATO's involvement that allowed Albanian terrorists to establish control over their Kosovo, historical Serbian territory, right? And some criminal regimes among NATO member states even recognize this terrorist entity, Kosovo regime, as some sort of independent state. And Pandora's box was opened by this ruthless criminal terrorist activity of the NATO, right? And since then, so many countries were targeted by NATO, from Libya to Afghanistan, right? And right now, NATO member states are playing crucial role with the active support of Israeli government in all the crimes, war crimes and crimes against humanity that Netanyahu's regime is committing, right? So that's what NATO is, really. So therefore, only proper strategy, if European states really want to be, Europe to become more safer, is to dissolve NATO as a terrorist organization and forget about it. That's it. But any other changes, any other decisions, I mean, who cares? Because we all understand and we all know perfectly well that NATO is our enemy and existential threat, and Russia, and there are many other countries worldwide, by the way. Everybody sees NATO as an offensive terrorist organization, right? It is what it is, and we all will act accordingly. And before I continue, dear friends, let me remind you, if I may, that this small media project of mine with several channels on YouTube, Rumble, Telegram, is completely subscriber funded, and I will be immensely grateful if you will also consider to support my work and this project with small donations through PayPal or Boosty platforms. And this is a Boosty platform, by the way, on which you can subscribe to my page and become a Patreon, or you can use this platform for donations or tips. And also, obviously, you can subscribe to my Patreon page, which is much more developed than Boosty, because I started working on Patreon way before, and there are over 200 videos there now, not just about news, but about many other topics. So all the links are on this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. And many thanks to all the members of our community who supported and continues to support my work. Truly grateful for your help. And we have this report now from RT that France's Macron issues yet another warning to Israel. French President Emmanuel Macron has reiterated his call for an arms embargo on Israel in response to the conflict in Gaza and Lebanon. He also condemned recent attacks on United Nations peacekeepers in southern Lebanon, describing them as totally unacceptable. Well, two Sri Lankan peacekeepers with the UN intern force in Lebanon were injured this week after a Merkava tank fired at their watchtower at the force headquarters in the border town of Nakoura. Israel claims its forces fired at an immediate threat, but Macron insists that the strike was deliberate, echoing the view of the force spokesperson who spoke to RT. Well, we have this correction on this news that earlier there was a report that two Irish peacekeepers were wounded as a result of this Israeli attack on a peacekeepers base. Then there was information that Indonesian peacekeepers were wounded, and now we have this correction that two peacekeepers that were wounded as a result of Israeli strike were from Sri Lanka, from Ceylon island nation. And when it comes to Macron's strong statements, yet again, we already hear from London that UK is not considering any arms embargo on Israel. We had the statements from Germany, from Berlin, that they also are not considering any arms embargo on Israel, and they will continue to supply weapons to the Netanyahu's regime. And US obviously is a major contributor to the Israelis' armed forces, secret services, and so on. And obviously Washington will not even consider any embargo on Israeli regime, whatever they are doing. It is just objective reality. So therefore, these calls of Macron are directed to whom, I wonder? I mean, to whom? I don't know. And I find it little strange that Macron is there to criticize Israel second time or third time in a row. I mean, not that many leaders in the West, risking that much. But I don't know what happened to Macron. But he is now like second or third time in the last couple of days. Are very critical of Israeli actions. RT is reporting that Biden orders for Trump to be protected like a sitting president. So US President Joe Biden has said Donald Trump requires request for extra security, including military transport, should be granted in light of two assassination attempts against the Republican nominee. Speaking to the reporters on Friday, Biden said Trump should be given everything needed as long as he does not ask for F-15s. Excuse me. So, well, it is obvious that protection of the Trump has to be increased because there are plenty of lunatics, right, that are threatening Trump, his inner circle, and who knows, maybe those lunatics are not operating alone. Maybe they being guided by some forces inside US or outside of US, who knows. So therefore, I can absolutely understand why security of the Trump is increased. It should be on the top level from very beginning, but for whatever reason, Secret Service and White House did not think about it straight away, which is also, I mean, rising questions. How? Why Trump was not protected from the very beginning of the presidential race, let's say, on the top level. Anyways, let's continue. RT is reporting that India to build two nuclear submarines with an eye on China. Excuse me. This recent call did not went away completely yet. So the Indian government on Wednesday gave a long-awaited clearance for a project to build nuclear-powered attack submarines. National media have reported, citing sources. The project cost is estimated at around 450 billion rupees or 5.4 billion US dollars, New Delhi has also cleared a deal to acquire 31 weaponized MQ-9B Predator drones from the US for an additional $4 billion as a part of a long-term plan to counter China in the region. Sources told the Times of India. The article noted that both platforms will be able to quietly gather intelligence, track enemy targets at their extended ranges, and then destroy them if required. A source told the paper that it will take 10 to 12 years to commission the vessels termed an SSN, meaning ship submarine nuclear, which will have a 190 megawatt pressure light water reactor and displacement of almost 10,000 tons. Okay, good for India, good for India. It is unfortunate, obviously, that New Delhi and Beijing are not necessarily on extremely friendly terms right now, but hopefully with the further development of BRICS, further strengthening of emerging multipolar world, and additional security guarantees for the world that will come with it. Hopefully, New Delhi and Beijing will manage to overcome whatever obstacles they are facing right now when it comes to bilateral relationships, because both countries are obviously immensely important for this world, entire world, and of course this world cannot afford these two countries to be on hostile terms with each other. It's so therefore it is good that India is investing in its own security big time, but meanwhile I guess all the major players in the global south, in emerging multipolar world, will do their best to bring New Delhi and Beijing closer to each other. Interfax is reporting that, and few more news, dear friends, before I end this update, about some space stuff. So Crew Dragon is expected to come back to Earth from International Space Station on Monday, and there will be 3 US astronauts and 1 Russian cosmonaut on this spacecraft. And also we have this interesting news that on NASA is about to launch a spacecraft towards one of the biggest moons of Jupiter, Europe, and this spacecraft, obviously unmanned craft, will conduct some scientific studies once it will reach Europe, because this moon is scientists believe that there is ocean under the ice that is covering this moon, and some biologists are even believe that there may be conditions on Europe for life to emerge. So therefore, on 14th of October, launch will take place from 39th Cosmic Center from Cape Canaveral in Florida, and SpaceX Falcon Heavy rocket will be used to launch this spacecraft towards the Europe. Good luck to scientists, good luck to NASA. Very important mission, and who knows, maybe sometime in the future this spacecraft will bring to us some fascinating news that yes, there is life forms on Europe, Jupiter's moon. That will be interesting, obviously. And well, I will end this update on this news. Relatively short update, dear friends, but packed with the news, and hopefully you will find it interesting, informative, and useful. And if so, please click that like button, leave some commentary just about anything. and share information about my channels with your friends in real life or on internet. Yesterday I had 3 videos on YouTube and Rumble, and final update on Patreon. And first video, first update, thanks to you, dear friends, managed to overcome obstacles from algorithm, and it was at least, you know, recommended to some members of our community, and it gained more than 11,000 views, I believe. Second and third updates were suppressed by algorithm as usual, but at least first one reached a wider audience. So thank you, dear friends, for this. And if you can, once again, please click that like button and leave some commentary. It might work again, isn't it? And finally, if you like my work, if you want to support her, as I already mentioned, you can do it through donations, through PayPal or Boosty platforms, or by subscribing to my Patreon page. All the links on this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. This is it for now. Once again, have a wonderful day and a great weekend. Take care.